Hello everybody, it's me, Ghost Critic, and welcome to Sunday. Sunday is my comic book review video upload time, and we've got a nice big stack of comics this week to chat about. And just to forewarn anyone who's new to my channel, there will be spoilers aplenty, as I'll be talking about the storylines, plot lines, character progressions, cliffhangers, basically what was inside the covers of last week's comic books that I picked up. So if you see me pick up a comic book that you've not read yet, either fast forward the video to the next one or stop it, go and read it and come back and hear my thoughts about it and see if they kind of couple up with yours. Now usually I start the video off with the issue that I probably didn't enjoy the most, but I did pick a book up on Wednesday that came out the previous week, and I do just want to touch on that book. So this is not the worst comic book I read this week. In fact, I enjoyed it a great deal. It was the Allred's Bug, The Adventures of Forager, and you kind of know what you're gonna get when you get the Allreds on a book. I believe my first one that I can remember title that had the Allreds on the art at least was the tail end of the original X-Force run that changed into X-Statix, and since then I don't honestly really see their style having changed or progressed over that time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They do their thing and they do it well, but I do really think their kind of retro aesthetic works really well with this particular title, because you've got the kind of 60s mod vibe meshing with the kind of modern emo look, and it just kind of really works for me here. We've got the Allreds basically plundering Kirby's Fourth World universe and adding so much more on top of it of Kirby's work. You know, you see OMAC in there, there's a little bit of Deadman, there's a really nice page actually with so many of the characters. I'm just quickly finding it. With loads of the kind of the fourth world characters on there, and it just brings back so much nostalgia from the era. I mean, even more so from the cover. You can see in the background the kind of the stone statue busts kind of breaking apart, but you can definitely see some very familiar faces there. The question obviously is, how does all of this all link in, as even the Sandman from the 1970s with Glob and Brute in tow turn up towards the end of this book, and it's very kind of dreamlike, added on the psychedelia that the Allreds love to throw in as well. It's a lot of madcap fun, action, and just a little bit of craziness in there that's kind of from the 70s, where everything just looks a little, you know, when you read comics books from the 70s now, they are a little bit silly, let's be honest. They look lovely, and they were kind of like the forefathers of what we have now in the comic books, and we should see them as these kind of comic book geniuses they are, and Kirby obviously is. But the stories were a bit hokey, and this feels hokey, but they're deliberately doing it in a hokey style, rather than this just being kind of poor 70s storytelling. But actually I really enjoyed this. It was fun, it was action-packed from the start to finish, it zoomed along at a great pace. There's enough mystery in there to make me think, well, what is this all about? What is this with the young girl and the dominoes? And that kind of domino effect of them all falling. I'm up for reading more of this. First Young Animal imprint that I've bought, and actually quite surprised that I liked it. Right, now we've got that comic out of the way, let's get on to this week comic books proper. And unfortunately, yes, I always start with the worst comic of the week, and that goes to... I hate doing this, but it seems to happen regularly. It's The Punisher, issue number 12, and this is kind of wrapping up the latest of this ongoing 12-issue storyline that Cloonan's been helming from the beginning, and quite frankly it ends incredibly predictably. There's this big over-the-top fight scene. It may be situated in some Canadian ocean atop an iceberg. The villain is injecting himself with this drug that makes him rage constantly, and you would think he would have had an overdose after about the third injection, but it's all very over the top and ultra violent. Frank escapes, returns home, is happy, and the baddie is caught. And I'm not sure how much more I can put up with this. Cloonan just, I don't know. Cloonan just doesn't seem to grasp the character of Frank. I was expecting better, and I harken back to the days when the likes of Remender and Rucker had been writing this book. Having a female writer on this just didn't work, or it just wasn't Cloonan's bag. But it seems like she's continuing on. There seems to be no sign of a new creative team. The artwork by Horrick and Martin, Matt Horrick and Frank Martin, the colour artist, is a lot better than it has been. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot crisper. The character of Frank doesn't seem to change as often in kind of stature and colour as much as he had in previous issues, but that's small consolation for what has been, for the majority of this run, a pretty terrible run. And I'm still picking it up. I don't know. The next book that could have, if Punisher wasn't there, this probably would have been the worst comic, but for different reasons really. It's Powers number 8 by Brian Michael Bendis and Erming. And basically it's because I'm lost. The solicitations on this book are just so sporadic, and quite frankly Bendis needs a better previously in Powers paragraph to kind of catch up readers, given this book has not been out for so long. Because I can't tell now whether this story is set in the past or is it in the present day. You know, we have our main character Walker, who is a detective who looks into superpower crimes, but he himself was a superhero. And we've had these past storylines because Walker doesn't remember who he was in kind of, I guess, previous lives. So I don't know whether this is now Walker not remembering who he was again, or if this is a story told in the past. Who is this wolf character that's looking on, who's this kind of, he seems to be like an aide to Walker, but I'm just confused by it all. I don't know what's going on. I just hope now that Bendis' TV show Powers is now cancelled, he can concentrate more on this book, keeping it out on a regular basis and making it more understandable and coherent to us, the readers. So let's move on to better comic book fare here as we look at DC's The Flash, issue number 22. And while I've not been following Batman the Button now, and I know that I was going to come into this book probably slightly confused, having missed out a chapter of this book, I did feel this, given that it is the Flash title, that it should have been kind of Barry Allen's moment in this book. But it still feels very Bat-centric, with them chasing off after Thane, all the drama and all the kind of pushing forward of the storyline seems to come from Batman rather than Barry and the Flash. And while we do get the Jay Garrick storyline in here, and this is a great retro looking cover, it didn't feel as original as the Batman reveal of his father and the storyline that came out of that. Because basically what we've got here is almost a rehashing of that original Rebirth #1 storyline when we had Wally West. Jay Garrick trying to break through, finding a connection with someone, only this time it isn't Barry that's going to make that connection. And again, more of this book seems to be a vehicle to spotlight the Watchmen, in particular Dr. Manhattan and their involvement in this whole storyline. We have the chase after Thane and his demise, I guess, at the hand of this all-seeing, omnipotent beast of a villain, which is probably Dr. Manhattan. And so I just felt very let down by this, and dare I say it, I almost feel like this Button storyline should have had a kind of mini series of itself, and these storylines could then concentrate on those particular characters and fit them into the main storyline. You'd never hear me say that. Tie-ins, offshoot storylines, no, I'm not usually up for that, but for some reason this I feel needs it. Otherwise you just get, it's basically the Button Batman, which is what I feel we're getting here. The artwork by new artist Howard Porter on the book is really great. I enjoyed the artwork, the art style of this. Some great pages of art from him. But I just feel slightly let down that this wasn't more Barry-centric than the Bat. But Batman probably sells more. Concluding the Purple storyline, it's Daredevil issue number 20, and as predicted, it was the Purple Kids that made everyone forget who Daredevil was. And everyone really means everyone, so including his girlfriend Kirsten and also his long-term friend Foggy, who both obviously knew his identity previously to pretty much everyone knowing. But the thing that kind of stuck in this, and it does get addressed, is why this story had to be told within the kind of confessional setting. Yes, Daredevil comes from a very religious background, and storylines have certainly favoured his kind of Catholic guilt, which is here yet again, as he feels guilty. Basically guilty about not telling Kirsten that he is the Daredevil, and he feels like he's continued to lie to her. And it kind of explains why Foggy has been so mad at him, because he does go and tell Foggy that he that he is really Daredevil, and Foggy remembers it all. That's kind of like the clause to what the Purple Kids did. Everyone forgets who Daredevil is unless Matt wants them to know, and then they remember everything again, which is I guess an interesting twist, and maybe used by Charles Soule later on in his run, however long he's going to stay on this title. But going back to it's the whole religious Catholic guilt theme, that he feels guilty for not telling his next girlfriend that he is Daredevil. But at the same time, he's not only saved the world, he saved Kirsten, and it's kind of the scales balance, and these aren't really sins as such that he should be confessing. It's just human nature, and he's not actually truly hurting anyone or broken any commandments, I would guess. Grey area, but still. This all builds up to where we now have life going back to, I guess, the status quo, where Daredevil can now go out and do his vigilante crime busting, but Matt can still go back and join the bar again and fight for justice in the courtroom. And at the end of this, the next storyline is being prepped up supreme, as Matt has a plan in the way that crime is working in in the Devil's Kitchen in New York, and how he personally wants to be able to deal with it. So that's going to be an interesting storyline coming up. Daredevil has been a solid book. Nothing amazing has been happening in this, especially in this story arc, really, but it's been solid storytelling with some great art by Ron Garney as we go through the book. So yes, that's Daredevil. Looking forward to the next storyline. Let's start ramping up that quality and kick off with Kurt Busiek's Astro City, issue number 44 from Vertigo Comics. Busiek, the king of the done-in-one storylines, I'm telling you. Just another great done-in-one story, as Busiek gives us these two characters, Ginny and Leah, who are investigating a case of kidnapping, but it's actually down here, our feline cover star that takes the spotlight. We have our own actual super cat who can fly and walk through walls. And this is where it's kind of like this fun element of Astro City comes in. You never really know what you're going to get, as this cat, who its owners kind of have taken in as a stray, but don't realise the powers that this cat has. And it's up to this super cat to go and find out where this young girl has been kidnapped and save the day and save her father from giving over secret formulas and the like. But even Super Cat needs help, and it comes from Rocket Dog. This is just such a fun comic. I could feel myself smiling with each page as I turned over. And you kind of, it's fun, the relationship, as muted as it is, between the cat and the dog, and the differences between their way of acting, as the dog is very kind of gung-ho, while the cat is more cautious and sneaky and manages to get into this villain's hideout. It's just a great, fun, cute story, and Busiek manages to, as always, have this start, middle and end to it, and he even sneaks in this kind of origin story for the readers of this cat, even if the girls, as they're retelling it, don't realise it. And we have guest artist on here, Rick Leonardo, who provides this more recognisable comic book style that you would more likely see in the likes of DC and most certainly Marvel, but it fits this book and this storyline very, very well, and I'm not disappointed that we don't have Brett Anderson on this book. He's obviously taking a little bit of a break, but once again, Astro City marks a highlight in my comic book reading week, and if you're not reading Astro City, go pick up those trades, catch up. This is the longest Astro City has ever lasted in a volume. They usually maybe go about 20, I'm trying to remember the last time it went as high as that, but they're usually short-lived wherever they land. But we're approaching issue 50 of Astro City, which I'm sure Busiek has his eye on. Moving on to DC, it's Super Sons issue number 4, which wraps up our Kid Amazo storyline. We had Superboy and Robin captured by Kid Amazo, and with Superboy not being at his fullest powers, I don't know if that's a storyline going on in anywhere elsewhere, but I'm not quite sure why he doesn't have his full set of superhero powers. Otherwise, well, why haven't they escaped yet? But who should come to their rescue? It's Lex Luthor. He's come back to claim his Amazo armour, and then let battle commence. And while the boys sort of cooperate with each other, and they are the ones that bring this fight to a conclusion, I want to give Peter Tomasi just a little bit of advice, just in case that he's not thinking of this already, but I don't want him to rely on the humour of this kind of junior odd couple between Robin and Superboy as a crutch. Yes, it brings a lot of humour to the book, kind of a momentum to it, but don't overuse it. I'd like to have him flesh out these two characters more than the one note of them being kind of at odds with each other all the time, and the kind of hijinks that comes out of that. We've got Jimenez and Sanchez on the art and the colour, and it just pops. It just brings this book to its colourful, rightful life, and I'm so happy that I took a chance with this, and I've just been entertained all the way through. Looking forward to seeing where Super Sons goes and where Peter Tomasi takes our two pint-sized heroes, but I'm sure he will do this book justice as he's done in so many other titles. Right, let's take a look at the top two books of this week on my reading pull list. There can obviously be only one pick of the week, but this was so close, but just pipped by the post. In second place comes Jeff Lemire's A Royal City, issue number 3. And as Lemire continues his story of this kind of dying town and a dysfunctional family with the fantastical supernatural twist, when you're reading this you really feel Lemire's emotion and passion in each page. Despite most of the characters being particularly unlikable in their own small ways, it does still feel very heartfelt, and it does kind of have its kind of soap opera-esque style firmly on the front page, as all the characters are dealing with their own soap opera-esque dramas. We've got our cover star here, Tara. She's trying to bring kind of new business to this town that's kind of ailing, I guess. The industry that used to flourish in the town is now starting to diminish, and she wants to bring new life to this town by making a new development. But of course that means demolishing one of the longest running businesses within Royal City, who just happens to work there, but her husband. And it's her husband that's now standing in her way, unionising the employees of this factory and making it very difficult for Tara's life. And so, you know, it's bad enough that their marriage doesn't seem to be going, you know, on the up and up. This almost feels like the final nail in the coffin. We've got the Pat and Richie scene in the car, very intense as they meet up for the first time since Richie has been back home. Pat come back home. Richie, the kind of drunk, wayward son who really doesn't care the fact that his dad is in the hospital and doesn't feel like the rest of the family want him around anyway. Patricia, the mother, she's there at the father's bedside, but there's kind of hints that she may have had an affair with another man. And then of course we have Pat, who's come back from his supposed great life back in, I don't know, it's probably something like New York, or, you know, one of those big American cities, but in fact his life is crumbling himself. He's having trouble writing his next book, and the thing that links them all is the presence of Tommy. Now we see Tommy, depending on which character we're with, at different stages of his life. And there's a great line in here where he sat opposite Pat in a kind of diner as Pat's trying to write his book, and Pat basically asks him, you know, why are you here? And he just says, I just want my life back. And it does feel like the characters that are still living are kind of holding on to their idea of Tommy, and keeping him from resting in peace. And there is that kind of kind of element to this book, and for each of them it feels so kind of, like I said right at the top of this, it's very heartfelt. There's a lot of feeling in this book, and it just makes it that little bit more special. The artwork in this book, surprisingly, is the best that I've seen Lemire doing. It doesn't appear to feel as rough and sketchy as it has in the past. The colours seem a lot more brighter and they pop out a lot more. I don't know whether this is Lemire trying, progressing his artwork and his art style, getting better. Not that I've ever thought Lemire's art style was in need of, getting better. I've always enjoyed that kind of scratchy, almost doodly art style that he has, much akin to like of Matt Kindt and his artistic style. But this book is always just so anticipated in my pull list. I'm always ready to kind of have the feels, and that's a great thing about what I get from this book. So, what made it to my pick of the week? Honestly, it surprised me. It's been a good book. It's always been a good book, but I never thought it would make a pick of the week choice for me, but he made it very easy for me. It's Low, issue 18, and from top to bottom, this particular issue was nigh on perfect. Remender, Cicchini and McCaig have really upped their game over these last few issues, which has culminated, at least now, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but certainly with this issue. Now we've got Tejo, one of the sisters, hunting the streets of Roachtown for Lino, who we've seen in past storylines. And the fights that these two have got into, and Tejo is still clutching onto hope, much like her mother in Finding the Surface. But here she is in Roachtown, and Roachtown, it is what it sounds like, and it's made all the more worse that she's in the suicide district, and this is basically the part of the town. I mean, this whole kind of environment that they're living in, they're on their last days. The air is running out. There's no escape now. They don't know what's at the surface. No one's kind of come back to say, look, it's safe or anything like that. So this, they think, is their last days as the last of the air dwindles out. So we are in kind of like full-on debauchery. We have this kind of Dante-esque hell of decadence where people are just doing whatever they like, and it's more so in Roachtown suicide district, and it's just sex and violence and drugs and alcohol. Not for the young at heart here. This is a very mature book. Lots of graphic sex scenes, I guess you could say, but as their journey through Roachtown continues through almost a chance fate encounter with this kind of stampede going through the town, Tejo finds Lino, and then this awesome, fantastic chase action sequence occurs, which really kind of rivals even the kind of sci-fi movie blockbusters, as we go from being atop travelling trains and fighting, jumping from car to cars that are driving through the sky, crashing into buildings, huge explosions, characters getting held at gunpoint and then falling off, big huge buildings, presumably plummeting to their death. It was exhausting yet exhilarating reading this book, and Cicchini's art style on this, especially with this issue, seems to be a lot clearer and a lot crisper, and I think that might be why McCaig's colours pop even more in this book. It was a fantastic read. Again, one of those books that Remender is piling a lot of passion into with Tacini and McCaig, and I just was thrilled as I read this. It's very exciting, really pushed Tejo's storyline along. I've almost forgotten about the mother and is she dead or not by the time I got to the end of this. It wasn't until I kind of read kind of Remender's editorial bit at the end that I was like, oh yeah, she's on the surface. Isn't she meant to be dead by now? I don't know. But this particular storyline has really held my attention and culminated in what was a great climax. Low, fantastic book, great sci-fi action, set underwater this time rather than out in the reaches of space, but still a great sci-fi read. Please pick this little puppy up because it's great. And they were my books this week. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of the books that I read, if you did indeed pick them up, and if I'm missing out on anything, let me know. And I'll see you next time. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and that like button. Until next time, bye bye.